Welcome back to the Hannahcast YouTube channel, and today we're going to be talking about October Oscar predictions for the Best Picture category. Now, before I go on, I do want to mention that memberships prices have been slashed. The memberships are now $1.99 a month, and nothing about the perks have changed. You still get the emojis, you still get the members-only videos. In fact, there's actually a couple of new ones waiting for you when you sign up. But now, let's get into the Oscar predictions. This is a bit of a hot take, but I still think Sing Sing is the frontrunner to win. Now, okay, when I say frontrunner, I don't think it's going to win all the precursors. I don't think it's going to win the Golden Globe for drama. It's probably like it's weird. I am kind of anticipating a Coda-esque run for it, but a lot of people seem very apprehensive about Sing Sing because no one has seen it. The fact that it was barely released in theaters at all and A24 really pulled it back is very strange. But again, I don't know if that has anything to do with the movie, because the fact that A24 just didn't even release it, really, in the grand scheme of things, is very, very strange. Everyone who has seen this movie absolutely loves it. Hell, I fell in love with it when I saw it. So I don't really know what the deal is right here. Like, it's very tough to figure out. So yeah, like, it's not very visible, but A24 is also just not making it visible. But ultimately, I do think it takes it at the end of the day, because at some point voters will have to see it. Like, I know some people are saying, well, the voters are not technically required to see everything. Sure, but also it's like, I don't know. I feel like if you're voting for Best Picture, you're probably going to at minimum see all the nominees. Or at least you're going to make an attempt to see all the nominees. And I can see a world where Sing Sing has like this kind of grassroots campaign, and when more and more Academy members start seeing it and start talking about it, it's like, oh man, you need to check out Sing Sing. It's pretty freaking great. Like, I feel like it's just going to be like this bubble that just keeps growing and growing and growing until it starts winning some precursors. Like, again, winning adapted screenplay, winning supporting actor for Clarence Macklin, winning SAG Ensemble, winning PGA. I mean, I can definitely tell you this, like Sing Sing's gonna do better on a preferential ballot than the Brutalist is going to. And I will say another bit of a hurdle this film is facing is that, you know, it's not going to be eligible for Writers Guild. Like, that is another hurdle that it's going to face. And this time the Writers Guild Awards are going to matter, because the nominations and the winners are, like, the nominations are going to be announced before the Oscar nominations, and the winners are going to be announced before the Oscars air. So I think Writers Guild will matter this year, but I could still see a world where it's winning adapted screenplay at Critics' Choice and BAFTA, because the category is very barren. Like, I looked at like, for example, at the Writers Guild website. Yeah, I was looking through my top the adapted screenplays in my top 10, which would be Sing Sing, Dune Part 2, Conclave, Room Next Door. I think a Complete Unknown would also be that. Oh yeah, and Amelia Perez. Those 5 were in my top 10 for Best Picture. Out of all the adapted screenplays I have in my top 10, the only one that's eligible for Writers Guild is Dune Part 2. Really, it's like, I guess because Dune Part 2 is the only one in my top 10 that's eligible for Writers Guild, it's like Sing Sing could still stand a better chance, maybe at Critics' Choice and BAFTA. Because, like, I know some people are trying to say Conclave would win screenplay. I just don't see it. If Conclave is, like, much lower down in the list for adapted screenplay, then I don't know, it makes a bit of a harder argument to make for winning adapted screenplay. And it's not like, you know, When Women Talking won, where, alright, sure, yeah, I was competing against Top Gun, but Top Gun wasn't really going to win adapted screenplay. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Women Talking and Top Gun were the only Best Picture nominees in there. Like, were the only Best Picture nominees in the category. I mean, there was also All Quiet on the Western Front, but All Quiet was also not eligible for Writers Guild. You kind of do want to go with whatever's closest to the Oscar. And so I just don't think I think Conclave is just a no-wins movie. I don't think it's going to win anything. And even with BAFTA, because, yeah, it's British, but usually, like, British things start winning at BAFTA if they're, like, top 2 for, like, Best Picture. Or, like, if they're, like, really high up there for Best Picture. Conclave is, again, it's just not that. Like, it's not gonna win just because it's British. If it's a lower tier Best Picture contender, then I don't think it's going to win adapted screenplay there. I just don't. Although I would say its biggest competition, it would be Emilia Perez. But there are a lot of like people who don't really care for Emilia Perez all that much. But again, the fact that it was like, I think number 2 at TIFF, like keep in mind, and I mean, hell, now that The Life of Chuck is gone, that's another thing I forgot to mention. The Life of Chuck is just not coming out this year. Now we could really say like out of the movies that placed, Emilia Perez was the highest one. Now that Chuck is gone, the fact that Emilia Perez has that much wide appeal for it, like that could also stand a very good chance. And also, of all the Best Picture contenders I have right here, Emilia Perez is the one where I currently have it winning the most awards. I have it winning Supporting Actress for Zoe Saldana. I have it winning Makeup and Hairstyling. I have it winning International Feature, Song, Score. And if you add in Adapted Screenplay, then boom, you got Picture. Or Director, because Director could very well happen too. And I've heard some people argue that Director is more likely to win than Adapted Screenplay, but regardless, I think either way, Emilia Perez, I think, is number 2 for Director and number 2 for Adapted Screenplay. Now, some people are saying Anora, which granted, I will say, I have still not seen Anora, but I don't know. I would have to be really, really, really convinced that Anora is like a real thing that's going to win Best Picture. Because, like, I know some people are saying Mikey Madison's going to win Lead Actress. Is she, though? Like, it is, like, I don't know when the last time, like, a completely, like, a pretty big, like, unknown, like, won Best Lead Actress. And, like, I don't like, even Brie Larson for Room had a bigger filmography than Mikey Madison. And yeah, sure, Mikey Madison, well, she was in the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't think, like, again, that was like the one thing she was in. Like, Brie Larson was still in like 21 Jump Street and what was that? Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Like, Brie Larson was still popping up in places. Mikey Madison, no one really knew who she was, and so like I just don't see her as a winning contending actress, especially since there are a lot of veterans that she's going up against. And people are saying, well, what about director? Looking at the trailers, it just doesn't feel like a movie that would win director. Because, like, directing winners are typically more like large-scale productions. Even some of the smaller films, you know, like, let's say Everything Ever All at Once. Like, sure, it had a small budget, but also, it still used that budget to, like, such an extent where, like, yeah, it has a lot of costumes, it has a lot of, like, big set pieces, and stunts, and crazy action sequences. Roma, like, felt like a kind of, sort of felt like a smaller thing, but also, again, it had a large production. Like, this, again, it had very big environments, like big crowds, even lots of visual effects shots. Like, Roma was still a pretty large scale film, and even Parasite with like the whole house set, and again using a lot of visual effects shots. Like, it was just a large scale film. Yeah, you could see that winning director. Anora just doesn't feel like that. It just doesn't feel like a film that would win director. And that makes it a lot harder for me to predict it in Best Picture because, alright, the screenplay, you got that. Fine. But I still think Mikey Madison has a big... You still have to make a big argument for Mikey Madison to win lead actress. And again, it just doesn't feel like a directing winner. So really, I don't really want to go off of screenplay and picture alone. It is a crowd pleaser. It did win the Palme d'Or, and it did win, not win, but it did place third place at TIFF, so that's pretty big. But I feel like it would need to have a bigger haul than I'm imagining it to, and Mikey Madison, I feel like, would have to be a critics sweeper in order for me to predict that she's winning lead actress. Not a critic sweeper, but I mean like throughout the precursors, like Golden Globe critics, twice BAFTA, SAG, she would have to be like constantly winning in order for me to go, okay, she's winning the Oscar. Right now, I just don't feel it. I'm just not feeling that. And then you have The Brutalist, which has a good argument to make. I think The Brutalist is winning director. It does feel like that large-scale directing achievement. I do have it winning production design and cinematography. Those are pretty big. And it can win lead actor. So that, again, that's a very good argument. The one problem I have with The Brutalist is that it's a 3.5 hour long historical epic, and that's a problem. I just don't know if this kind of film is going to win Best Picture. And people are going to go, well, what about Oppenheimer? Oppenheimer won Best Picture. And that was a big, large-scale biopic. Yeah, it was. But here's the problem. Again, this is something I've been kind of saying. Christopher Nolan was probably going to win a Best Picture winner. No, was probably going to direct a Best Picture winner at some point in his career. Because audiences absolutely love his films. They will go out in droves to see it. And Oppenheimer, what happened? People didn't think it was going to be that big of a box office success. And then it ended up nearly making $1 billion at the box office. That doesn't happen. That does not happen. Even Killers of the Flower Moon, when that came out, it was a box office flop. No one went to go see it. And people were trying to say, oh man, Oppenheimer's paving the road for more of these big historical epics to be seen, and then it didn't repeat. It's just not repeating, because Christopher Nolan is like a beast all of his own. He is able to make films where even if the subject matter doesn't really sound like something audiences would like, he still makes them in a way that thrills audiences and that they love. I don't think The Brutalist is going to be like that. The Brutalist, I just cannot see doing well on a preferential ballot. Even if it wins a lot of big precursors, it could win Golden Globe, it could win Critics' Choice, it could win BAFTA, but I'm not convinced that it's going to take PGA, because I feel like this is the film that is ripe to just slip and just not take Best Picture at the end of the day. I just don't see it. Dune Part 2. I think, again, this is just one of those films where it's very safe for a nomination. I can't really see a world where it misses Best Picture. All right, maybe it misses the BAFTA 5. Maybe we'll have to see. That's probably the worst. That's probably the worst that happens to Dune Part 2. But even then, it is a sequel to the first Dune. People like this one more than the first Dune. It made way more money than the first Dune. There is no chance in hell this misses Best Picture. No, that's just not happening. So, yeah. But I don't think it's winning any Oscars. I feel like for me to think it's winning Best Picture, it would need to win Director. And this is too much of a film that's big blockbuster. The director's branch is not going to go for that. And people are going to try to say Oppenheimer. But remember, Oppenheimer was not expected to be a box office success. It wasn't meant to be that kind of film. So, I don't think so with Dune. It's not winning. And now we get to the films where it's alright, let's discuss why I think they're getting nominated. And honestly, I feel like from here on out, my list looks pretty different from a lot of other people's lists. So let's start here. A Complete Unknown. Why do I have this so high up? Well, I still think Timothée Chalamet's winning lead actor for this. Because this makes the most sense for a lead actor win. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm not looking forward to A Complete Unknown, but it's look, sometimes there's just those movies that get into Best Picture that you don't like, and you kind of have to just accept it. A Complete Unknown, as long as it's not, bad, or at least, or as long as people don't hate this movie, let's say if it gets an Elvis response, it'll be fine. Even though I don't think it's going to be as big of a player as Elvis. But again, the fact that it's coming out around Christmas time, it's right. It's perfectly in that spot to be nominated for Best Picture and not really win anything except maybe lead actor. But ultimately, I will still keep this in. And juror number 2, ever since Life of Chuck moved out, I put juror number 2 back in. And ever since that trailer dropped, I'm all right, yep, I'm in. Well, let's do it. I'm going to be Mr. Smarty here. I'm going to put this in. Because I can definitely see the package for juror number 2. Picture, director, screenplay, supporting actress, maybe supporting actor, editing. And there are a lot of, things that people are going is this really going to happen? Because Clint Eastwood hasn't really made a Best Picture nominee since American Sniper. Here are my arguments. All right, here's my case for why I think Juror number 2 is getting into Best Picture. All right. One, it does have a narrative behind it. It is Clint Eastwood's last film that he's directing, so I feel like that carries a little bit of a narrative. But granted, narrative doesn't always take off. But here's the thing. This feels a lot more different than some of Eastwood's more recent films. You know, some of his more recent films, including, what was it? Jersey Boys, what was it? What was it called? American Sniper, Sully, what was it? Richard Jewell, and even The Mule. Like, this is unlike those films were based on true stories, and that hasn't really been working for Clint Eastwood as of recently. But this is completely fictional. This is a completely fictional story, so I feel like it's not going to be tackling anything really that controversial. And also, the story just sounds interesting. The story of a man who is brought into jury duty because, you know, there's a murder trial happening, and then he finds out, wait, I think I might have committed the murder. And it starts that kind of big moral question. That just sounds interesting. That story sounds interesting. Again, like, and the fact that it is an original concept is like, I'm kind of surprised no one's really tried this before. Or at the very least, like, no one like Clint Eastwood. And I'm not really I'm not even really the biggest fan of Clint Eastwood's movies. I didn't really think American Sniper was all that great. I didn't think, what was it called? Richard Jewell was all that great. But I'm genuinely intrigued by Juror number 2. It just sounds like it's not going to be as controversial as some of his other films. And again, the story just sounds really interesting. And what's another interesting thing is that Juror number 2, if I'm not mistaken, I think it still has a very, long, what's the word I'm looking for, running time, if I'm not mistaken. Like 144 minutes? Yeah. Like, it looks like it's looking to be like a very long movie. So, oh, wait, apparently that was wrong. Apparently it's actually an hour and 54 minutes. Okay, well, scrap that part. So, yeah. But also, I might be bad at math, so there's probably that. But still, the fact that this does sound like a very interesting film, I'm just like, all right, yeah. And if it's generally very agreeable, people go, yeah, I actually really like Juror number 2. Like, you could, again, like, I could see the package. And also, like, it also makes sense in terms of, like, the directing category, because right now in Best Director, there's not really anybody that's like a household name in the lineup. Or at least, like, people are going, maybe people could try to argue, like, what about Dune Part 2? But again, that's just not the kind of film that the director's branch goes for. Like, when you look through all the when you look through a lot of the years in terms of Best Director, there's usually someone that is, like, a big name that gets nominated. And people are going to go, well, about 2015? Well, you know, George Miller still got nominated, and I think people know who George Miller is. You know, he had previously done the previous Mad Max movies. He had done Happy Feet. He'd done Babe. Like, I think people generally knew who George Miller was. I don't think anyone's gonna know who Greg Quadar is in Sing Sing or Kate or Brady Corbett. And, like, no, like, people don't really know who. Even Sean Baker, I don't think most people go, oh man, yeah, Sean Baker, I love that director. No, there's usually someone in there who's like a big household name, and I think the one that makes the most sense to me is Clint Eastwood. And people could also argue Jason Reitman, but I don't know. I don't think Saturday Night's happening, but we'll get to that here in a bit. But yeah, I feel like Juror number 2 has a very strong argument in terms of its package. And again, it does fit in nicely with Best Director. And so, again, I guess I'll keep it in until, like, the reviews are like, yeah, we don't really care about this movie. Or, like, I don't know. Well, just, again, precursors will also have to matter, because, you know, there are some films that aren't really, like, the most acclaimed that still get into Best Picture. But, I don't know. We'll still have to see. But I do have some faith in Juror number 2. I feel like, again, it just kind of makes sense there. Also, another thing I want to point about Juror number 2, it is eligible for Writers Guild. That's something I will point out. It's like it does the fact that it is eligible for Writers Guild. I think that shows it's going to get some precursor, recognition. And so it's like, Anyways, Conclave. Yeah, I think classic, Oscar bait film, but ultimately no wins. I don't think it's going to be as big as some people think. Like, some people are thinking cinematography, costumes, or production design. I'm like, nope. In terms of production design and costumes, I feel like it's just too contemporary for that, like, for a film like this, for the Academy. And the cinematography just does, like, at least from the trailers, doesn't really look all that showy. It doesn't look all that impressive. It just looks like it's kind of just doing the bare minimum. So I don't know. I do think Conclave will get in, but right now I kind of have it only in for like picture, screenplay, actor, and do I have it in for editing? Yes, but only at number 5, and admittedly a complete unknown could probably also take that over, but I don't know. Conclave, I think it could be on the chopping block. And then here are the two that are also big, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. The Room Next Door. Now, a lot of people are saying, really? You're going off of just the Golden Lion? Sure. But also, it's like, I don't know. Even though it's not like the most acclaimed, it's not the most acclaimed Pedro Almodovar movie, even on Rotten Tomatoes, I think it still has like a 96, I think. It's like, it's still a very agreeable movie. Like, it's just like people don't really seem to absolutely love it. But again, you don't, I guess it's one of those movies where, I'm thinking it's one of those movies where it's like, it doesn't have to be the most acclaimed. It can just so barely get in. Again, sort of like Elvis. Because Elvis was clearly not one of the most acclaimed movies of the year. And neither was Triangle of Sadness, really. But because it had enough, it was there. At least with Elvis, I'll mainly talk about Elvis here. The fact that Elvis was just kind of generally getting in places, it's like, all right, sure. And The Room Next Door can do that, and also, like, you can see the package: Best Picture, Director, Lead Actress, maybe 2. We'll have to see. And I think also Adapted Screenplay, and also, what was it? Score. Yeah, original score. So the package does make sense. And I feel like, especially for international voters, they might really like The Room Next Door. So I could see the Golden Globes going for this. I could see BAFTA going pretty well for this. So I don't know how well it's going to do at Critics' Choice and PGA, which is why it's kind of like on the chopping block. But again, I can see it getting in. I can see it getting in. Yeah. And so, in terms of the Golden Lion, like, you can point out to films like, Happening, and what was it called? What was that movie called? All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. Sure. But at the same time, no one knew what those movies were. This is a film directed by Oscar winner Pedro Almodovar and starring Oscar winners Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton. I feel like that is going to, I feel like that's easily going to have more eyes on it. And yeah, again, it's not as acclaimed as some of his other films, but there have been, films that were not as acclaimed that also got into Best Picture. So it's like, yeah, again, it might not, there is a chance it might not get nominated, but I don't know. Again, the package for me just seems a lot more, it makes a lot more sense for me to predict it into Best Picture than to not. Because I would probably, so I'm keeping The Room Next Door. And Seed of the Sacred Fig. I know there are people that are saying, I didn't really like this movie all that much. Like, the third act kind of didn't really do much for me. True. There are people that say that, but the reviews across the board are still really, really good. Across the board, the reviews are still very strong. Letterboxd has a pretty good, a very good 4.1. See the Sacred Fig has like a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes, and the average rating is 8.10. Metacritic has 84. Even IMDb has a 7.9. That's not bad for a movie like this. So it's like, I think, yeah, it will have some detractors, but however, I feel like the overall message of this film, and especially, given the backstory of the production of this film, the industry is going to be very fascinated by this film, and they're going to want to reward it. And because again, it's not like, again, it does have some detractors, but it clearly has enough fans to where I feel like, yeah, like I could definitely see Golden Globe and BAFTA going for it. Maybe, I don't know, I had to think about Golden Globe, because sure, the Golden Globes did nominate The Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall, but I don't know if that was a fluke or not. Definitely, BAFTA's at, like, most assuredly, I think, going to nominate it for, like, at least director and original screenplay. And that's all I would really need. Although if it got a lot of nominations at the Globes, then all right, sure, yeah, then I would absolutely have it in, because we know that Critics' Choice and PGA are not going to go for a movie like this. They're just not. And again, Anatomy of a Fall and The Zone of Interest, they did get in at PGA, but that's something the PGA almost never does. So I'm willing to say that was a fluke. That was definitely a fluke. So yeah, I'm going to, like, I still think See the Sacred Fig is going to get in, and I can see it getting a few nominations, you know, Best Picture, Director, Original Screenplay, International Feature. If they really wanted to go for it, maybe Film Editing, but even then, I don't know. Like, Drive My Car didn't get editing, and Anatomy of a Fall did get film editing, but you could also argue that was, like, a top 5, maybe, for Best Picture. So, honestly, like, I'll probably say that it's only going to get, like, those 4 nominations. And See the Sacred Fig, you know, well, yeah, it's probably, yeah, well, like, I think it'll still get in. And those are my 10 for Best Picture, but we have a little bit of ways to go down. Nickel Boys. I've heard this film is very stylized in terms of the POV, and, you know, this could definitely happen. I guess the problem is, like, I don't know where I'd fit it. Like, one could say I could swap it out for The Room Next Door, but I don't know. The Room Next Door, I feel like again, I just see the nomination potential a little bit more than Nickel Boys. And this is such a radically new style of filmmaking that, like, I don't know if, like, it's going to translate to general audiences that well. I mean, even the reviews aren't really as strong, or at least not as consistent as something like The Room Next Door or See the Sacred Fig. Like, I think on Rotten Tomatoes, Nickel Boys has, like a 70-something. That's not great. It does have a lot of fans, and those passionate fans could propel it to Best Picture, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be the right kind of experimental, like something like The Zone of Interest or Drive My Car, because those were experimental, but they were still very, very highly acclaimed. Nickel Boys, people seem to have like an acquired taste for it. It's one of those things. So I just don't know about that. The Apprentice, I'm definitely keeping my eyes on that, because this does have a good haul that it could take. It's good. I think no matter what, at bare minimum, Sebastian Stan is taking lead actor. I think that's just happening. And another thing I noticed, The Apprentice is also Writers Guild covered. Even if it's just those 3 for Best Picture, those are still very strong for this kind of film. The fact that it's not like some big Oscar bait film, like, that could happen. Jeremy Strong could maybe, wait, is it Jeremy Strong that's in it? I think, maybe, I don't know. But he could get nominated for supporting actor. Editing could maybe happen. I need to see the film, because I do want to see how, like, because I know that initially the makeup isn't, like, all that Trumpy and stuff, but, or at least, like, it's more like when he was younger, but then you see him as he gets older and he becomes more like the Donald Trump we know. I want to see what the makeup is like. I want to see that, because if we do see quite a bit of him looking like that, then, and it looks very good, then makeup could happen. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but if I did, I'm sorry, but editing, like, the way everything looks cut together, editing looks like it could also happen. So, I mean, and like, that's pretty big. Like, that, like, I'm really, really, like, contemplating putting this in Best Picture, because this could definitely happen. And people are going to go, well, the outcome in the election could probably determine whether or not this film gets in. Like, if Trump wins, the movie could get into Best Picture. If not, well, then it's goose egged. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the case, because this has been my argument. even if Trump loses the election, he's not going to suddenly go away. It's not like he's suddenly going to go away and people are just not going to know where he is. It's like, no, like, he's still going to be in the news. He's still going to be talking about, voter fraud or whatever. And he's still going to be causing a bunch of ruckus, and people are just going to know that he's still around and he's annoying everyone, and he's gonna, like, they're probably gonna, and they could still care about nominating this for Best Picture. And especially, like, now with the kind of fan base that Trump has garnered, like the strong passionate fan base that he's garnered, and how he's kind of shifted conservative politics and conservative ideologies to such an insane degree. Like, even if he somehow goes away, which he won't, his fan base will most definitely not go away. They are loud, and like they're just like they're going to be on voters' minds, and I can see the Academy going for The Apprentice. Because again, I feel like the culture would be the culture, right? The culture is very ripe for a film, like for a biopic about Donald Trump to get into Best Picture, especially one that's very interesting like this, because because it's taking more of a journalistic approach and shows Donald Trump before he became president, like back in the 70s. Like, and again, you have a lead actor contender that I still think is going to get in at the end of the day. So if you wanted to pair this up with lead actor, screenplay, picture, and you wanted to throw in supporting actor and editing, then yeah, I think The Apprentice would be not a bad bet to make. And then we get to Blitz, and this is where, again, I get a little bit controversial. I just, like, especially having seen the trailer, I just don't see it. This is, honestly, I'm kind of goose egging, because, like, nothing about the filmmaking looks all that exciting in the first place. The story doesn't look all that interesting. And sure, yeah, it's being directed by Steve McQueen, but also, let's be fair here, Steve McQueen hasn't really directed anything like Best Picture contending since 12 Years a Slave, and he's had some films after that. So it's like, I don't know, he might be a one-hit wonder with that, and Blitz just doesn't really look like it's going to be that kind of film. Like, I don't even know if BAFTA goes for it, because people are going to go, well, BAFTA could go for it, but it's like, sometimes they just don't. Like, sometimes they just don't really go for a movie because they're just not that interested. Again, yeah, you could argue the British bias, but the British bias usually goes into films that are, like, most assuredly getting into Best Picture at the Oscars. And I don't know, like, I don't even think Blitz is going to be like Darkest Hour, because Darkest Hour, you knew that Gary Oldman was winning lead actor. Like, everyone knew that was happening. And you could still see cinematography, you could still see production design and all that. Here, maybe production design? Maybe? But, like, Saoirse Ronan, even if she were to get nominated for this, she's not winning supporting actress. She's not going to win. The cinematography just doesn't look all that exciting at all, and it's like, it could, like, I don't know. I'm just not really feeling it. I'm not really feeling Blitz. Something just doesn't feel right about it. Then we get to Saturday Night. On paper, this should have worked. Like, this should have gotten in, and again, it's not over. It could maybe happen, but the fact that it's like a biopic about how the first Saturday Night Live came to be, and you have this big cast with an ensemble. You have a previous Oscar nominee with Jason Reitman, and suddenly it just doesn't really seem to no one really seems to care. And this is different from Sing Sing, because with Sing Sing, yeah, it barely got released and stuff, but the fact that those who did see it absolutely loved it, like, that's, I feel like, what could save it at the end of the day. But here with Saturday Night, no one seems to care, and even the people coming out of it don't seem to really care about the movie having seen it. It's like, I don't know what's going on with this film. It just seems like it's not really, and even the screenplay, I think I'm even going to drop out of original screenplay here because it just doesn't, people just don't really seem to be that passionate for it. Whereas, like, you know, the Apprentice at least has the advantage of, like, it doesn't seem like an awards contender, and then you could see it, boom, shooting up. Saturday Night seems like a film that was, like, destined to be, like, a big Best Picture contender, and then it flops. And no one cares. I feel like it's better to be a film that sneak attacks than to be a film that rides high at first and then, like, just flops. And I feel like Saturday Night is going to be the one that flops. And so, despite the fact that I could see the nominations, like, you could see original screenplay, you could see editing, you could see original score, and all that. It's like, the fact that people just don't really think this movie's all that great, and a lot of people consider it just to be underwhelming. And it's not even like a traditionally Oscar bait kind of film. Because again, something like A Complete Unknown, like, yeah, that's very much traditional Oscar bait. This one feels like it's trying to be Oscar bait, but in sort of a newish way. But it's also like you can't really nominate an actor for it because, like, it's too big of an ensemble, and it doesn't look like it doesn't look like it has any steam like the Trial of Chicago 7 had. Like, at least Trial, like, even though it didn't win any Oscars, it had steam before. Saturday Night, it didn't even get steam at all. It's like it just poofed and there was nothing. So that's a problem. So yeah, I don't really think Saturday Night is happening. I mean, it's not impossible, but I don't know. No one seems to care about this film. And then we have Night Bitch. People are going to be shocked that I still have this in the conversation. Apparently, SAG screenings have been going around and people seem to really dig it. I don't know. I feel like Night Bitch might be more broadly appealing than we think. Because Amy Adams is still in contention for lead actress. I still think she can win. And I could maybe see Night Bitch also getting a Writers Guild. So that could happen. And again, yeah, I think initially people were like, oh, I don't know what to feel about this movie in terms of its response. But its fans seem to override the negative reception. And so I think there is a world where, like, Night Bitch might, like, it could happen. You know, it's not like people don't care about it. Because, again, yeah, it is one of those movies where it's like the response is a little bit divisive, but there are some big, big fans of this movie. And again, there is an actress that you can nominate to win, which is Amy Adams. I think she would do very well at SAG. And maybe even win the Golden Globe for Comedy Actress. And maybe BAFTA, maybe Critics' Choice, we'll have to see. But yeah, honestly, I think, like, Night Bitch could definitely happen. That could happen. And then we get to the final five. A lot of people are suggesting Gladiator 2 is going to get nominated. I'm not there yet. I'm just not there yet. It's like, could Gladiator 2 get PGA? Maybe. Critics' Choice? Perhaps, but at the end of the day, I just don't see this making a big splash. And people are going to compare it to Top Gun Maverick, but also Top Gun Maverick had a few things going behind it. One, it was it was like right after the pandemic. And people were like, oh man, we're back at the movies and we're seeing Tom Cruise do all this stuff. And keep in mind, they were also trying to go off of that whole, oh, this was all practical. You know, there was no CGI whatsoever, even though in reality there was a lot of CGI and they just didn't want to tell anyone. But still, they had that narrative of, oh, we didn't use any CGI. This is a post-pandemic film, no CGI, just full on, you know, just good old-fashioned filmmaking. Gladiator 2, it's not even trying to hide the fact that there's a ton of CG in this movie. And again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like the CG looks very good. But I don't think this is going to be comparable to Top Gun Maverick because, like, again, Top Gun Maverick, because again, people are for some reason allergic to CGI. So when you say that there's no CGI in a movie, people are like, ooh, yummy. I love this. You know, like Barbie or Oppenheimer or Beetlejuice, they try to say, oh, no CGI. And yet there's always some CGI, mainly with Barbie and Beetlejuice. There's most assuredly a lot of CGI in those movies. And it's like, yeah. Whereas this film, clearly they're not even trying to go off of that. So I feel like general people are going to go, ew, CGI, yucky. Which again is a stupid mindset, but But also, another pure fact that is just not making me want to go with Gladiator 2. It's still Ridley Scott directing, guys. It's still Ridley Scott. Are we forgetting that this man has, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, are we forgetting that Ridley Scott has only directed 2 Best Picture nominated films, and he's not like some director that doesn't really, make a lot of movies and stuff. No, he makes movies like almost every other year. He makes movies almost every other year, and like only 2 of them have ever gotten into Best Picture. So like, why would I ever think Gladiator 2 is doing that? And not only is it that he's only ever directed 2 other Best Picture nominated films, his films are consistently hit or miss. Or maybe inconsistently, but like, yeah, he'll direct The Last Duel. That was great. But then he'll direct House of Gucci, which wasn't great. He'll direct The Martian. That was great. But then he directed Napoleon. That wasn't great. He is so hit or miss. So it's like, I'm not willing to bank on Gladiator 2 unless the reviews come out and are saying, oh yeah, one of the best movies of the year. Let's freaking go, everybody. I'm just not buying it right now. I'm just not really buying it. Honestly, I don't know why I have it even this high up. I should probably put it a little bit lower, but I don't know. Yeah, actually, no, I have a good pretty much where I am now, but it's like, with Ridley Scott, I need to be proven. All right, this is one of those instances where I have to see how the reviews are for me to go, all right, yep, let's nominate, let me predict this for Best Picture. I need to wait and see on this, because Ridley Scott is a wild card unlike any other director. He makes a lot of movies, and only 2 of them have ever been nominated for Best Picture. So it's like, I'm not willing to bet on a Ridley Scott film. I'm not willing to put a bet on that until I see the reviews and they're saying this is like one of the best films of the year. Then I will consider it. But right now, nope, not now. Nope. September 5th or September 5, I don't know what this is supposed to be. This is a film that I didn't have in before, but apparently this is a film about this news organization or so, and basically they're reporting on attacks against Israeli what's the word I'm looking for, athletes during the Olympics. So like, I don't know, it's a very messy subject, but apparently the movie doesn't necessarily take a stance on the matter. But I don't know. I feel like I know a lot of people are trying to predict this, but I don't know. I feel like this is going to be the subject matter alone could still be too controversial. It could still be too controversial for right now. And also the nomination package doesn't really seem that strong, because right now I would only have it in, if I were to predict it in Best Picture, I'd really only have it in for picture and screenplay. It doesn't sound like an editing contender. It doesn't look like any of the actors are going to get nominated. So it's like, do I really want to go with that? Not really. And even the reviews aren't the strongest. Like, it does have a 90 on Rotten Tomatoes, but like, man, a 6.40 average rating. I don't know. I feel like people are just generally going to go, all right, it's fine. It's not great. So I don't know about that. The piano lesson, again, I don't think that's happening. Like, I think maybe there's a chance it could get SAG Ensemble. I mean, hell, it might get SAG Ensemble over Saturday Night. I mean, that might even happen. And it is trying to be more cinematic than a lot of August Wilson plays. But however, I don't know. I feel like people are just kind of throwing the towel in on this. Queer, I still think this would have a better chance for Best Picture than Challengers. Challengers just seems like more of like a Gen Z kind of thirst movie, whereas Queer, it feels like something the Academy would probably more go with. It seems a little bit more like, what older folks would care about. But again, I feel like it's either Daniel Craig or bust, so I don't know. And The Wild Robot, I want to keep my eye on this, but at the same time, it didn't place at TIFF, but at the same time, Life of Chuck is out. Like, was Wild Robot number 4? Like, that's the interesting thing. You kind of figure out, what was number 4 at TIFF. So there is a chance it could have placed at TIFF, but we don't know. But again, we don't know because Chuck is gone now. But still, it's something interesting to think about. It's still, like, the reviews for The Wild Robot are still incredible. Like, my God, people are still in love with this film. All right? Like, let me try to find where it is right now. Oh, yeah. On Rotten Tomatoes, it still has a 98%. That is huge. And, like, it does have an 8.40. So, like, it's, like, I don't know how strong that is compared to some of the other big films we've had recently. Boy and the Heron had an 8.5 with a 97%, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse had a 95% with an 8.6 out of 10. And with Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, it has a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes and 8.3 out of 10. So, like, I think in terms of percentages, the more people seem to like The Wild Robot than, some of the other big, potentially Best Picture contending animated films. And the average rating is still somewhat comparable. Again, I don't know, but it's still animated. Like, there's still the bias against animation, and I don't know how. But again, it does seem like older folks seem to really like The Wild Robot, so maybe that could help it. But again, I don't know. I think I would need to see, like, major precursor support. Again, we'll have to see what the Golden Globes do. I'm not going to bank on the Golden Globes for that. If at Critics' Choice, The Wild Robot gets picture, and it could also get a few other nominations, but mainly if it gets picture and adapted screenplay. If The Wild Robot gets adapted screenplay at Critics' Choice, then I'm going to take it a little bit more seriously for Best Picture at the Oscars. Because that could be like, oh, wait, this might actually happen. And again, obviously, you have to have PGA and BAFTA for adapted screenplay. We'll have to see how they do about that. Joker Folie à Deux. This film is absolutely dead. Like, people despise, like, good lord. The reviews when it was at Venice started off at, 60-ish%, 50, high 50s, low 60s. Not great, but now the reviews have dropped so badly to where it is now at 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. And audiences fucking hate this movie. This has a worse cinema score rating than movies like Catwoman, Jack and Jill. I think it even has a worse cinema score rating than Fantastic Four 2015. And people think that's one of the worst films ever. So it's the fact that Joker 2, people hate it this much, man, this movie is absolutely dead. I'm still considering it for costumes. I need to see it, but I don't, it's not, the reviews are way worse than I thought they would ever be. I think that will about do it for Best Picture Oscar predictions. Next week will be director and original screenplay and adapted screenplay. Now I'm going to pass the question off to you. What are your Best Picture Oscar predictions for October? Thank you so much for watching, and consider hitting that subscribe button, because if you don't, Joker Folie à Deux will get into Best Picture.